I think we're good to go.
All right. Then I will welcome everybody to the October meeting of the Albany Public Library Board of Trustees. It is 6:15 and we will call this meeting to order. We have 6 trustees present. Trustees Sarah Dallas, Bridget Pryor, and Lynette Robinson are absent at the moment. Lynette is hopefully joining us soon. So that brings us to our first public comment period. Has there been any public comment via email or phone?
I believe so.
Okay, no public comment. So that normally we would do our consent agenda now, but since we have our strategic plan consultant, Mary Ellen Boucher, with us, we thought we would bump her up to the beginning of the meeting. She's going to present on her progress in guiding the strategic plan, and trustees will then have an opportunity to ask questions. Yeah.
Trustee West, I just have a procedural question. Who is taking minutes?
Stephanie,
Got it. Thank you.
take it away, Mary Ellen.
Good evening. Can you all hear me? Is this working?
It's
Okay,
working.
very good. Okay, so we met with the strategic planning, the ad hoc strategic planning committee last week and gave this presentation. We went into it in detail and had a very robust conversation with a lot of good dialogue. So what I'm sharing with you this evening is a higher level overview to prepare us all for the retreat that will take place on October 22nd. You have the full report and I encourage you to read it before we get to the retreat. And I won't go into all of those details in the interest of time today, but let's go to the next slide, Melanie. Thank you. So what I like to do is have any organization who's getting into this process to reconcile its strategic plan it currently has on the books. And so this one's a little old. The pandemic got in the way. But in any case, Melanie, a couple months ago when we started this environmental scanning process, did the snapshot of where you were at that point in time. And in these 4 focus areas, all of the tactical pieces were in the implementation stage, moving towards the targeted outcome. So you can see here, there are some leftovers. And when we talked with the group last week, I encourage you to bring those to the retreat in terms of what tactical pieces remain yet undone to see if they fit into the direction that you're all taking for the strategic plan for the next 3 years. Next slide, please. So we started off with a patron survey administered by Stephanie, and there were over 500 responses. And there were questions about the programs and were people likely to use the programs or services in the next year. And so the high vote getters were museum passes. That's apparently a crowd pleaser. People were really interested in using those going forward. And then the local history or author talks, people were interested in those. And then we broke off significantly from there, but still some decent numbers in terms of the other adult programs on this list. Next slide, please. So kids and teens programs and services. So everything fell well below, yes, ma'am.
What's our total end for this?
Over 500 plus. Okay, kids and teens programs, likelihood to use it in the next year, nothing hit 30%. So, you know, that's something to think about, to talk about as we move into the strategic planning process. Next slide, please. Okay, so then I conducted 9 focus groups through August and September, and there were 65 total participants in those groups. It included Board of Trustees, Foundation and Friends, patrons, leadership, and staff. So,
Sorry.
yes, ma'am. You want to back up to?
Just to the focus group?
Yeah.
So out of the patrons, were there any young adult users or any youth in there that were part of the focus group?
Yes. Yeah, it was a pretty good span across age groups And I did them at various locations, various branches, same with the staff. So with those inputs, and I asked similar questions of the staff and the board and patrons and so forth. So I was able to put together a SWOT analysis. So I won't go through this line by line, but clearly the strengths are no surprise to you, that the library is seen as a convener. It's a highly valued resource in the community, and it's seen as the leader in the library community. The strengths include a dedicated staff that goes above and beyond, and there are abundance of resources across all types of media. And people really like the concept of the branches, being able to walk to a branch. And city support, they felt supported by the city with a healthy budget. And I like this pull quote here: other libraries can't hold a candle to APL. So you should be very proud of that. Now, in terms of weaknesses, you know that staff recruitment and retention is an issue, and within that, competitive pay and the civil service process. Staff everywhere, because of the pandemic, are feeling burnout. And whenever I do a staff engagement survey in healthcare, it doesn't matter where it is, one of the top 3 opportunities for improvement is communication. Bi-directional communication, communication at all levels of the organization, and then out to the stakeholders and back. Staff safety is a concern. The diversity of the staff. Does the staff reflect the community that it serves? And then the lack of training during the onboarding process, so people feel confident in doing the work that they were hired to do, and then having ongoing training during the life cycle of their employment. Washington Avenue, infrastructure, parking, safety, those kinds of concerns. And then inconsistent practices and procedures across branches. So if I was an employee stationed here at Washington and I went to Pine Hills, they might have a different procedure for giving a new patron a card, for instance. I'm just using that as an example. There seems to be, from what people say, variation in processes and procedures across the branches. And so that can be confusing not only for the staff, but for the patrons as well. Let's see, top-heavy bureaucratic with silos, an unclear chain of command and role definition. These were concerns expressed by the staff, and staff not included in decisions that affect their work. That's another typical staff engagement survey opportunity for improvement. So you're not alone there. And then insufficient staff for all of the offerings. Staff and patrons want you to be all things to all people. And they like the fact that you've had mission creep over the years. The downside is you can't staff all of those programs and services. So that's a dissatisfier for people. Okay, and then too many systems, digital systems that don't connect. So when we move on to opportunities, they see the new executive director as fresh eyes with new ideas and a fresh perspective coming in. Opportunity for more outreach. What about the people who don't use APL? Have you reached out to them to find out why, to help bring them in? Expanding the reach to underserved areas, those who can't walk to their libraries. What options do they have? And then recreate that sense of community post-pandemic. You know, we're all kind of scrambling to get back to the way we were, or define the new normal after the, not even after the pandemic, as we normalize that. Everybody, you know, always likes to have more access, which can include extended hours. Then saw an opportunity for the new union contract to look at the pay structure and the pay tables. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we added access to that in our discussion last week. Staff growth and development, their well-being and recognition. What opportunities or what structure is there to provide recognition for a job well done, real time or, you know, on a regular basis. And then rebuilding volunteer base and interns. If you know, need to augment your staff, what are the ways of doing that and seeking out those kinds of supports? Let's see. reinstate staff meetings, visible leadership. And we've talked about most of these things in some of the other categories. So in terms of threats, workplace safety and security, and losing institutional knowledge as people leave. And then external factors that are affecting all organizations: climate change, inflation, increasing costs, staff burnout, reliance on the fund balance as a budget strategy, community violence, book banning, not here in our local community, but what impact might those practices in other areas have. Mission creep, we talked about that, and less foot traffic. So if we take a look at all of these inputs, I'm gonna, well, let's stop here for a second. I'll get to that. Let's talk about vision. Yes, ma'am.
Sort of going off Andrea's question, is there a breakdown geographically and demographically of responses so that we know if certain neighborhoods are using more of X resource or seeing, this is a particular problem? Are older adults having more trouble with this access? Is there that level where we'll be able to use this to help target groups with higher potential needs or desires?
I didn't have that information, but Stephanie would know if it breaks down like that. No, yeah, sorry. Good idea, though. Good idea.
So, sorry, so I just want to make sure I heard that correctly. So it's not broken down demographically or geographically?
Correct.
Yeah, I was going to say, I asked a question during our committee meeting about demographics, and I think you identified that there was like racial and age, but not necessarily
Yeah. Aren't there
neighborhood.
some? Okay. Oh, all right.
I was gonna say,
Okay.
'cause I
thought I'd
asked-
seen it in the past,
I was
our
going to say, I know I
surveys.
asked during the committee meeting
Right,
if that would be
yeah.
available for our board meeting in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But
Right, so that doesn't mean that as you proceed in the strategic planning process, particularly the outreach and going out into the community, maybe doing some forums and some town halls, that you don't have the opportunity to get that information. If it wasn't available in the survey, doesn't mean it's lost forever.
right, I think our concern is just understanding the basis of the data we've been given
Yeah,
right
yeah,
now.
Sure,
right?
sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Right, so when you look at the numbers and it says that,
This is
Yeah.
a high level roll up.
no, I'm just saying that it looks like you have less than 50% of patrons that are interested or likely to use the kids and teen program services, for example. They're all less than 30%, so that 12% are not interested in tutoring, or only 12% are interested in tutoring. That's what begs my question.
Sure.
What was it, a microcosm? How many? So is that 12% of the 500 were only 20 of them students, or were only 50 of them students? Then it seems as if the data would be a little skewed, but that's just.
Yeah, well, sure. You had, how many patrons do you have? How many people have cards?
We're about 66,000.
66,000. Just over 500 people responded to the survey. So it's a sample.
Mm.
And these other inputs in terms of the focus groups, those are other data points. Do we have all answers from all people? Absolutely not. But it does point to the need for more discussions out in the community vis-a-vis outreach.
All right, and I would have liked to see that, yes, out of the 500, these are the responses, but out of the 500, we have a cutout that says at 500 people responded, out of the 500, 50 of them are students, and out of those 50 students,
Yeah.
only 12% are likely
Yeah,
to use those
Good point.
services.
So well taken.
That's where I was going.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So APL has a mission, it has values, but no formal documented vision. So one of the questions I asked all of the people in the focus groups was to describe their hopes and dreams for APL going forward. And so some of the things that I heard, some really nice taglines: everyone has a library card. That's a pretty awesome vision. A citizen of APL, of Albany, a citizen of APL. APL provides a great experience, every patron, every encounter. And then you'll see all these other comments that people had in terms of what they would like to see in terms of a vision. So I'll show you how we're going to use this during the retreat. So let's just move on to the strategic plan focus areas. So as we look at that SWOT analysis and kind of boil it down and categorize it, the ad hoc strategic planning committee agreed that these would be the 4 areas of focus during the retreat on October 22nd. So it's community engagement, and there are some bullets from the focus groups and the information underneath each of these, but there is more in the report in the appendix. So there's more definition, and we'll bring that to the retreat so you have that available. So community engagement, workforce, growing people and careers, diversity, equity, inclusion and access, and sustainability. So let's just back up and ask if there are any questions about those areas to focus. Now, they're not a lot different from your last strategic plan in terms of topics, but the definition under them and the direction is different, at least in part this time. Okay, next slide. So all of this feeds into the retreat on October 22nd. We'll do a quick review just to center us all on the SWOT analysis, and then we'll do some work on the vision and see if we can come up with a final vision statement at that meeting, or at least move us along so that you can do that after the fact. And then we're going to use a model called the World Cafe. This has been used at least nationally, if not internationally. Many different organizations I've participated in it on a national level and used it here locally with success. And so what we'll do is we'll have 4 breakout rooms, one for each of those topics areas, focus areas, and there will be a facilitator and recorder in each one of those breakout rooms, and everybody in groups, which will be assigned. So there's a good cross-section of board and staff participants will spend time in each of those.
I'm sorry,
Yes.
say that one more time.
Uh,
So a cross-section of board and staff
Staff.
participants?
Right, participants for the retreat.
I'm, okay. Go ahead. I'm a little confused right now, but go ahead. Maybe I'm not understanding. Go ahead.
Okay, so the retreat participants include the board, and Andrea, can you?
Sure. So when Mary Ellen and I connected shortly after I was hired in August, or when I started in August, she reached out. We had a conversation about how the focus groups and the survey would run, and the retreat was envisioned as library leadership and the board of trustees and library leadership coming together for a full day of this, basically like this exercise of reviewing the SWOT analysis, looking at the vision, doing the breakout sessions. And so I had sent a message to the board and all of the leadership team in late August to say, okay, here's the vision for the retreat. Here's what the schedule is, and that was all in the interest, I think, of putting the doodle out there so that we could come up with a common date. And so you probably saw the names of the staff members who responded to the doodle when you responded to the doodle. Anyway, we got to a date.
Didn't show any names.
Yeah, I just.
Oh, okay. Well, the email had all of the names on it.
I apologize. I didn't realize that reading all of the CCs was essential to knowing that things were changing. If that is a procedure and part of how communication works, I think that we should all be made aware that the CC process is how we find out that things are getting looped in and changed.
Oh,
So is
I-
this a change?
No, I didn't think it was a change. No, my understanding of the strategic plan process sort of as a whole was that this day was always meant to be the leadership team of the library and the board coming together, not to finalize the plan and set it in stone, but to talk about the vision for the future, talk about the tactics that,
Well, let me ask you what your concern is.
So my experience with boards have been, and I'm just going by my experience. So my experience with boards have been that, yes, the board meets. And in addition to the board, if you're doing a board retreat, it would be, so for example, I'll do a school district, right? So for the school district, when they have their board retreat, the only people that are there, it's not necessarily leadership. It may be cabinets. So it would be the same. So it would be, in this instance, I would envision it being the board, the trustees, as well as the executive director and assistant director. That's just been my experience throughout, different organizations, whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's a public entity, whatever it is. It's not necessarily, because you have the executive director, the assistant director, who then are the conduit of information to the staff. So that's just been my experience, that it's.
It's a different experience from mine. And we could probably, anybody who served on boards, identify 5 or 6 different iterations or models. So that's what was recommended. You all might want to talk about that and make, so does the ad hoc strategic planning committee represent this group in that decision-making process? Or they make recommendations to you, right?
Okay, so I think that definitely, I guess we have to go down the timeline of how events happen, because there's definitely a lot of confusion here. And the first time I realized that additional 10 employees were even coming to the board retreat was at the strategic committee meeting, strategic plan committee meeting. So I think that there's definitely there's some links broken in reference to communication. So your RFP called for a strategic plan, right? So initially when that was had, Sarah was here on the board. It was the previous board, but we're still contracting you for the strategic plan. So the understanding from my point of view and from everyone else on the board who I've spoke to, which is everyone with the exception of Tom, in reference to what the idea was, the board retreat and strategic plan are 2 separate entities. Were supposed to be 2 separate entities, and everyone's understanding is kind of was news to everyone that we're going to have these additional 10 staff members there at the board retreat. So I didn't want to speak out of turn, raise a couple red flags for me, wanted to go back and take a look and see where this all happened. During that meeting, Andrea made a comment that, well, they're CC'd on the email. I said, okay, all right. Well, when I asked who were the 10 staff members who were going to be there, I didn't want to speak out of turn. I said, okay, I'll go ahead and take a look at it and see where things went awry. So we go from you being the RFP being put out, you getting contracted for the RFP for strategic planning. In the midst of all that, we get the new board on. It definitely was a consensus among the previous board and this new board. We did definitely want to wait for the executive director and have her input in reference to the strategic plan. When it comes to the board retreat, that's still something from my understanding and from what everyone else on the board whom I spoke to, 2 separate entities. It goes from Sam, our previous secretary, Sam scheduling, this board retreat, and that's what the initial change started with. The email chain in reference to a board retreat and getting scheduled for a board retreat. So that was the expectation and my understanding and a lot of everyone else's understanding. Then it gets switched from when Sam wasn't here to now Andrew sending out the emails, and it goes from a board retreat to a strategic plan board retreat. So that was something that kind of flew by under the radar for everyone, from my understanding.
Well, could I just interject right here in terms of timeline? So in May, the conversation that we had when I made the initial presentation to the Ad hoc Strategic Planning Committee, and I think Arlene's probably the only one. Tom, were you in the group?
Arlene was on the
No.
previous committee.
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't think
Yeah.
it was.
So many people have left since then,
Absolutely.
and Melanie was there as well. So
Mhm.
in my presentation, in terms of how I would execute
Mhm.
the proposal that was accepted, the discussion there, and we have the slides if you want to see them, included a retreat, a strategic planning retreat. So that goes back May, before some of you were even on the board.
Okay, so I'll let Arlene speak to that, but from my understanding, that's not what the call of action was or what the understanding was. I'll let her speak to the May meeting.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm thinking right now I'm having some confusion. In that there was supposed to be a meeting of the trustees to engage in a strategic planning process. That could be the board retreat. That could be the instance where it's just the board members working with all the information that's been generated from the focus forums, from conversations with staff, constituents, and all that, having that information and moving forward with developing the plan.
Absolutely.
What I understand is the concern here is that people did not expect that this was going to also embrace the entire leadership team, staff leadership team of the library. Okay, and I've seen it happen that way, where you would have trustees and board members and staff working together, but this was not the idea that the majority that people had was going to work that way.
Okay, so I think then that's my misunderstanding as I communicated to Andrea, early on when we connected about the strategic planning process. I didn't know that.
Mhm.
She didn't know it. So we made an assumption.
And
So-
I think the word, sorry. I think the word retreat is where we're running into some problems, because my understanding is that in previous, years of the board coming together at this time of year, it was considered a board retreat, and it was just the board. And so I can understand and appreciate how that word, like, being brought into this strategic plan has created some cross communications. I don't know if it is helpful to introduce this at this point, but in the message that I sent in August to the board, and
22nd.
yes,
So
I said Mary Ellen's vision for this retreat is to bring the full board and leadership team for the library together in person. We'll have an agenda. In addition to this retreat being an inspiring highlight of the planning process, it's a unique opportunity for the board and APL staff to work together in the same room on our shared goal of improving APL.
absolutely. So in receiving that email, everyone received that email. Everyone, I believe, responded to the new updated availability. And that's what I was referencing when I first was speaking about this email chain. You go from an understanding of a board retreat and a strategic plan, now all of a sudden being combined, it's being kind of flying under the radar, little bit of a cloak and dagger in reference to the board retreat.
So that's
So-
kind of pejorative, I have to say.
I don't think so. I mean, I think if it's kind of flew under the radar with everyone, I don't think so. I mean, I think that what's understood doesn't need to be explained. So if the understanding for most of the board and everyone that I've spoken to, that we have a board retreat, we also have a strategic planning process, we have a strategic planning committee as well. Those that are on the strategic plan committee itself didn't even really have the understanding that there were going to be 10 additional staff members there. I don't think so. I mean, regardless of who wants to say what, when I called Tom, he said, he and you and Andrea spoke about that. I think that there's some communication that needs to happen as opposed to an email where you think you're just clicking on for, and it could be very well our oversight. Absolutely, because it's clearly there. But I don't think that that's the appropriate way to communicate that the vision has changed. If that was the vision in the very beginning, why would it be reiterated that this is a kind of like a new vision? That doesn't really make sense to me either, now that I'm thinking.
Well, I think it was transition communication. A new executive director, some new members of the board. That discussion was had in May, not in terms of who exactly would attend, but that it would be a retreat. And past precedent, when I was on the board, we did use a day-long retreat as a strategic planning venue. So you're right. Some of this got lost on the shuffle, not intentionally. It wasn't cloak and dagger. It wasn't meant to leave anybody out of the communication process. It was an honest mistake.
And I will say for my part, to be quite honest, to be honest, I saw that it was a poll and I needed to click and make a selection. I didn't read the whole email. It was kind of long. I didn't, just being honest, I didn't read the whole.
I don't think anybody was trying to do.
And I think it does. So I guess we're looking at how do we fix it, right? How do we move forward? And what are our options and what would we like to do as a group together?
So can we start with the how? Is the day-long meeting to do the strategic plan, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Is that an issue?
So Mary Ellen, I have a question. I guess this is a question open to everyone on the board. As a board, we went for a tax increase for, I personally, we would have, either way, went for a tax increase. Money is an issue. Is it appropriate to contract yourself to gather information for the concerns of the staff, for the concerns of the public, all stakeholders, to gather all that information? And you're very well versed in that information from the meeting that we had. So I definitely applaud you in your, your retention and your very intensive information gathering that you did. In that, in us contracting with you for that, we also have an executive director and an assistant as well, who are very well versed in the concerns of the staff. Economically, it doesn't make sense to contract and pay for that information, to have two representatives of staff who are very well versed in that information, to be able to advocate for the staff, to advocate for the employees and the concerns that they've heard on I'm sure, a daily basis in their internal staff meetings, their internal information gathering themselves, and to then bring an additional 10 staff from 9 to 4 and pay for staff to fill their vacancies. Economically, does that make sense?
I'm sorry. Can I respond?
Yes.
Okay. Well, for one thing, we're all on the same team here, looking to the future of the library. There's no like us and them going on. This retreat exercise is an opportunity to share ideas about the future of the library, which is not a threatening thing at all for any of us. We all want what is best for the future of the library here. And no, as I said before, nothing's going to be written in stone at this retreat. This is an opportunity to come together in a way that, frankly, we don't get an opportunity to do. I know I'm new to the organization, but we don't get an opportunity to come together like this. And we have a lot of new faces. I think, one thing that I learned at my last library is that the board was always eager to interface with staff and kind of get a sense of the leadership team or the librarians in a different setting. It was always kind of something that was looked forward to. And I think that I would invite the board to consider the possibility of letting this retreat play out and then adding, if you choose, an opportunity to kind of regroup after that and discuss what happened, kind of like, again, kind of add to the process in that way. To your point, Jare, though, about vacancies and so forth, this is the leadership team of the library that wouldn't have had to work on Saturday typically, or at least not all of them. This is time that they have set aside to support this process. And in doing so, most of them would be taking like a day off earlier in the week because it's a 5-day work week. So just to that concern, I mean, this is just regular straight time for all of the people involved.
Okay, so with that, I recall you saying in the strategic plan committee meeting that we're already paying for the staff to be there, is what I recall you saying when we were asking.
It's not on top of their regular pay, is what I'm saying. It's not like a bonus pay situation or overtime situation. This is just like one of the 5 days.
So what I heard, just give me a second. What I heard in the meeting was that when we were inquiring about breakout rooms and having the additional staff there to work just the breakout rooms, you said we can't do that because we're already paying essentially for the staff members that are there for their spots to be filled. So we don't have it to stretch to bring in even more staff to be able to work those breakout rooms so they can stay stationary, and the ones that you want to transition throughout all 4 breakout rooms will be able to do so. We were looking at other options to be able to bring other people in from, Friends and Foundation or whatever, and explore other options to be able to bring people in to allow those 10 employees to also transition throughout the breakout rooms as well. So none of them were stationary.
That's right.
Okay, so that's what I was referring to when you
Yes.
said or that's what you said.
And
So
let me further address that. So I was able to arrange for 4 of the 10 library managers who are going to be there anyway to be facilitators, and we specifically asked 4 of the 10 who don't have public service facing positions. So that's why the 4 that I emailed you about earlier today were chosen. So it's kind of our way of compromise so that we don't have to bring in additional APL staff or inconvenience the organization in that way, and still get the work done of the World Cafes. So.
And I get that, and I did see your email from earlier today as well. I do want to make note that it's a little bit, I don't even really know the word for it, but it can come across to me as a little bit offensive if it's seen as an adversarial relationship, or saying, we're not, enemies here, we all want to work together, because everyone has their role and has a specific job and a function, if the desire is for people to follow their desired functions or their contracted functions, whatever you want to say. We're a board, we are the governing body of the library. So I don't think that has to be seen as an adversarial thing to be a trustee and to work in the role as a trustee and to follow the guidelines of a trustee, to have staff, to have employees, to have people who even patron the library. Everyone has their role. Everyone has their job. Everyone has the opportunity to have input. So to have a strategic plan committee meeting and then have a strategic plan meeting with the full board, and want it to be the full board to be able to discuss the results that Mary Ellen have gathered, that you yourself and Melanie have gathered, all that information, and discuss it amongst the board without staff being there. I don't see that as being an adversarial thing when we are all doing the duties of being a trustee of the library. We're not saying that I'm not saying I don't want to have a meeting, or I'm not open to having a meeting with staff or whatever desired staff want to be there. However, I think that there's a process for strategic planning. There's a process for a board retreat. There's a process for really everything that we do in its capacity. So we can call a separate meeting or a different meeting. That wasn't the understanding of anybody on the board. So it doesn't have to be adversarial. It's kind of offensive to me to even use that kind of language, because roles should be enforced, or everyone has their role, and why can everyone play their role?
Is it okay that because we're a new board for us to just meet together? Like this is.
Yes, whatever we want to do, we're the board.
I mean,
And
like,
our
could it
board
just be a
retreat
retreat
is
of
what-
us and then plan something additional for the board members and the staff. I'm just, as a new board member, just seeing if we could work together on something first. Was, I mean, again, I didn't go through all of the CCs either. Not saying working in school administration, I see emails all day. So I kind of like skim through stuff and then I fill out my part. But just being a new board member, would it be possible for us to work at the retreat together first and then have?
So, not to interrupt you, but I'm wondering if, because there's a new executive director and several new board members, you might welcome the input from seasoned staff. That's just another way to look at it.
I guess I'm seeing it as something that can't possibly hurt and that can only be interesting to all of us and help, I mean, like, and I agree with you, Jerry. It is absolutely non-adversarial. Like this is, in fact, like in this kind of exercise, and Mary Ellen, correct me if I'm wrong, but we could almost all remove our respective hats for the purpose of just exchanging ideas about what could be good for the library going forward. I mean, again, we're not getting together on this day to carve it in granite and finish it. It's one step of a process that's already gone down the road to now. I mean, obviously it's completely at the board's discretion whether or not you want to get together.
So I actually echo what trustee Lynette said. And I agree that we could all there, but as a new trustee, I think that I would relish the time to spend with my fellow trustees and get the input of the staff, because we're getting the input of the staff, but what I heard is that I know that Melanie has definitely an extensive background and knowledge, historical knowledge. I know that Andrea, you bring knowledge from other libraries. So I think that we would have that other information there, but I think that to give an example, it would kind of be like, teach me how to ride a bike first before you throw me in a race with other people. I think I would just kind of like to just kind of get to know my board members a little bit better, my trustees a little bit better, and talk about visions, what we see for the library and how we analyze the data and how we see the library going forward, and getting that information, the institutional knowledge and the background knowledge from Andrea and Melanie. But that's just what my thoughts are.
It sounds like this is a re-envisioning of the day. I mean, in deference to Mary Ellen, your time. I mean, I think if the board wants to take action to re-envision this day now, then it's appropriate to release staff who have already set aside that time, as well as Mary Ellen, in the interest of kind of reshaping this day. And it might actually, I mean, if this is how it's gonna pivot, I would suggest that maybe an alternate use for this time would be the core training that Tom, you had asked for the new board members, or suggested might be a good thing to do. So, I mean, it is a day when you are all committed to being here for the library anyway. So maybe that would be a good use of time. I don't know.
So I'll speak for myself as a new trustee. I think where some of the confusion is coming in is the use of the term retreat as applied to the strategic planning process, because I think a lot of the new board members came in with the understanding that, particularly because we have a new executive director and a new board, we just have to know how to work together and get to know each other. So I think there was the assumption that we would have, a purely board retreat opportunity to get to know each other. And then we'd really jump into the pool and start doing work. So I think things just got out of order based on the already started process of a strategic plan. So speaking for myself, I don't feel the need to re-envision the 22nd. In hindsight, would have been great if we would have been able to quickly get together some just actual board only retreat, learning from, tenured members, talking about our visions as like new board members. But that's not what's happened. But I don't feel that because that hasn't happened, that's a reason to pump the brakes on the strategic planning process. I think now that we well, at least again, speaking for myself, now that I understand like much more clearly and, have like revisited communication, it definitely spells out this is a strategic planning activity. I think just the throwing the retreat part on is where some of the confusion got thrown in. If it was like strategic planning workshop, I'd be like, great, this is tied to the strategic plan I need to accomplish. So just again, speaking for myself, I'm fine proceeding with the strategic planning exercise. Do I think it's paramount that we do get a board retreat that is not like, we have work to get done, but it's purely getting to know each other and figuring out workflows and all of that. That's where I'm falling down.
So I definitely hear you on that. For me, it seems to be a matter of transparency. I feel like there were a lot of conversations had that the board itself weren't privy to, and I don't think the right lines of communication were had. Mary Ellen is contracted to the board, essentially. Tom, when I asked him, well, who changed it, or, who made this, when did this happen that the 10 other staff were coming? He said, well, I can't remember, who I spoke to, but, I told Andrea or, Mary Ellen, okay, yeah, it's a great idea. That's fine, but making decisions on behalf of the board, it would be great if the board is then notified of those decisions being made. So to me, it's just about transparency. It's not an issue of working with the staff. We're here to serve the public. We're here to have a happy staff. We're here to enable the staff to be able to do their job to serve the public as well. So it should never be an adversarial relationship. And I don't see it as an adversarial relationship. I think it's more about transparency. And if certain conversations are had without everyone being at the table, that's fine, because as board president, Tom does have to do that occasionally. He will. But it's that trickling down of information that has to happen so that we all can be on the same page. So I don't think anybody's opposed to working with staff. We would never be opposed to working with staff and their input. But if everyone has an idea of this is a process that we're following, and everyone seems to have had that idea of a particular process we were following, and then it seems to be something else when we get down to the end, something went wrong more than just the labeling of a retreat, and something went way wrong before, rather than it just being a simple change of the terms.
Well, so I also this is supposed to work for me, I think.
Oh, I didn't even see you with that. Okay.
Sounds like it's working.
So I also apologize for the use of the word retreat, and I didn't realize that meant different things to other people. And I'm also new at this too, so I'm sure I did make a mistake in communication. And I appreciate your understanding that I'm learning, we're all learning, we're all new. And it really does sound to me like we just had a misunderstanding about the name of what this day is, which I apologize for. And I don't think there's an underlying problem with staff attending the strategic plan meeting. I think we can't really make a strategic plan without working with the people who are going to implement it on a day-to-day basis. So the communication issue is important and something that will actually be in the strategic plan that we all need to get better at, especially me. But given the communication issue, like with the understanding that was a mistake, is there still an issue beyond that?
I do think there is an issue in reference to it. It seems almost that the staff are fighting their way to get to this meeting as if they don't have confidence in Andrea or Melanie being able to advocate for them.
Oh, no,
And
I'm sorry.
It seems very...
No, that's definitely not the case. I just have to interject. I mean, going back to what Mary Ellen described earlier, like this was always what I understood to be the plan for the strategic plan. I was the one who initiated the conversations that led to the 10 people on staff being included. So like that, yeah, I just want to correct that because that's definitely not.
And can I make a comment too? Like, I'm looking at the RFP, which again, like precedes my time here, but there's a specific bullet in the scope of services that says meet with strategic plan ad hoc committee and selected library admin and staff over the course of several meetings. So to me, I'm saying, I think this meeting falls in with one of those 3 to 5 meetings that's
Absolutely.
stipulated in the scope of services. So
Absolutely.
I don't get the impression that it's like staff are fighting their way on. I think this meeting is absolutely part of this bullet point within scope of services. So I think what I keep taking away from this is like, we're a new board, we have new leadership, we're working on our communication. This is something every board struggles with. So I think is how I look at this is, one, there's like a couple questions. One, do we feel the need to re-envision this retreat? My position is no. Like, two, do we need a board retreat that is like purely not tied to strategic planning, that is just us, you know, like building the vocabulary and strengthening the muscle to be trustees? Absolutely. So like that seems to be a thing we need to, you know, do, and then we proceed from there. And I think we have the understanding like CCs do not mean that like you're on suddenly invited to a meeting, and just maybe like some very clear like meeting attendees, like, because you know we've had multiple conversations, like we have a million emails, we're all like working professionals, and so things do get lost amongst the thousands of emails you see in a day. So
I agree with Paige, but it's also, I feel like the retreat with the trustees should have come before the work. I mean, and now that this is already in play, like it's getting ready to happen, we didn't have the opportunity to sit with each other first. That's just where I am with it. Like,
And so, and I understand that and I agree, and I don't want to belabor anything, but I think that what I'm hearing and what I'm just looking at is, because you had a transition of members, because you had a transition of APL leadership, perhaps at the July meeting, or even in an email, it should have been something that spelled out. So listen, because the RFP came before a lot of us were here, right? So just so you know, we have this RFP. We're working on a strategic plan. This is something that happens every year. So, I mean, something that introduced the RFP to the new members or to the board again, because you're crossing over years, you're crossing over fiscal years, you're just getting into new territory. And if it's spelled out in an email that's just about the plan, other than take the poll, because again, and I have to apologize for that. When I see take a poll, I'm just taking a poll. I'm not reading everything else in there. I'm like, the object of this email is for me to do the poll and complete it. I've done it. If we have an email that says, okay, so you've completed the doodle poll, now here's the information about what to expect at this meeting or at this retreat or at the strategic plan. Here's the information on what to expect. And then lay it out, like, this is what we're expecting. This is what you can expect at this. This is something that we voted on in May, just something like that, because I think that would have gone a long way toward giving information and, you know, trying to focus people. So when I send out emails, I'll put keys in a subject so that people know. It might be long, but okay, response requested. I just need your response. Important information inside. I need you to read what's in there. Just cues, because we're all fallible. So I just, you know, I know we've discussed this for like an hour. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. Raises even more questions. Go ahead, Arlene.
Okay, so I really appreciate the conversation, and I think a lot of lessons have been learned today. I think, you know, there are things that if we could have done differently, would have done differently, and I know will never be done again. I know that this is okay. What I recommend is we all agree that we should have our time together, and that opportunity to do the core training I think it's a good time because we will have opportunity to look at the role of a trustee, in relations to how, the system should be working and all of that stuff. We will look at what our relationship with staff should be. So that is coming. And we are going to have some time to work together. That said, the strategic plan has to get done. It has to. And I know it feels like it's out of order, but it's out of order. And, we're going to work to get this right. My question is, can we move forward with the strategic planning process, knowing that, there's work that we need to do as a board of trustees, so that we can be clear about our role, everybody could be clearer about the role and the responsibilities of the board. And just move forward with this process. Can we do that? And how can we do that?
I definitely agree with you in that. For me, it just goes down a rabbit hole and more questions begin to arise. So when we did the committee assignments, we were strategic in the way we did them so that previous members, board trustee members who were here were on existing committees now and would essentially be the chairs of the committees. They would be there to be able to be the launching pad to propel us forward. So we didn't have to do work, start the work over again. We can continue where we left off essentially. With that being said, this shouldn't have happened. There was an understanding there it being lost in translation somewhere really doesn't cut it for me anyway. I think it's a matter of transparency. Now, when we go back to the RFP, we can drill down on specific points. Okay, let's bring up about selected staff will be there. Okay, who selected these staff members? Now I have other questions that seem to have been made without the board or strategic plan committee being involved in that conversation because this information wasn't really known to everyone. So for me, it's a matter of transparency. To me, that's a bigger issue than this simply saying retreat or workshop. That's neither here nor there. The issue for me is transparency. So can we talk about who selected the library administration that was going to be there? When did that happen? The ad hoc committee, the strategic plan ad hoc committee, we took the assignments in August, the beginning of August. So does anyone here know when the staff, who picked the staff that were going to be there?
You said it was the executive committee, right? Like already an organized.
The executive committee, no, it was, no, Mary Ellen and I had a conversation when I came on board. I called her to get caught up on where we were with the plan, and she asked for a recommendation from me about who should be included on the strategic planning retreat day. And I suggested that the leadership team for the library would be the appropriate group. And it never ever occurred to me that I was making a decision that was outside of my jurisdiction or whatever. So that was what happened.
When did that conversation take place? Like what month? When was that?
August. Yeah. As
in your email, you're saying that from that email?
It was right before I sent that email because that was the email. The email of the 22nd was the email that I sent on the heels of that conversation. So that was like the follow-up.
Okay, so to me, that seems pertinent information. If you have someone contracted to the board and we're having these conversations or these decisions, that will be pertinent information to discuss with the board before that decision is finalized. Now that brings me to another question where and I do appreciate you organizing the meetings and you know, filling in for, there not being a dedicated, you know, secretary to do these things. But to me, that would, raise another concern or another, you know, reason why the board would need their own staff, their own, secretary. To me, I think that would raise a red flag if the
No,
1 minute
this
we're
is a-
scheduling for for something with the board, then the next minute we have all these different
I'm sorry, I beg.
staff CC'd on the email.
I beg your pardon. I really think this is just me being new to this process. It has nothing to do with any uh, lack of responsibility on my part to, this was like just genuinely a conception on my part that perhaps I should not have had and that I would not have going forward. It has no bearing on, like, it wouldn't be the responsibility of a board clerk or an admin assistant to relay this kind of, like, I'm the one who bears the responsibility is what I'm saying. So, I mean, the underlying question is the same one that Arlene asked, which is this going to go forward or not? Like, that's the decision that the board has to make tonight. And I can't make that decision for you, of course, but I would, I guess, implore you to just let it happen, and then we can move on from there, including, you know, having a separate retreat for the board if so decided. I don't know what else to say. I really think that it could be a really, I think it could be a really positive experience for bringing ideas together about the future of the library. And I think that in the future, I will definitely do a better job of bringing decisions that affect the board back to the board president and the board in general. And I really thought that I was doing the right thing by communicating in my email who was going to be at the retreat. And this was just, you know, it was an honest mistake. So I just, you know, I'm not sure where to go from here.
I want to thank Jare for her energy and for her insight and for wanting to make sure that we're doing things in decency and in good order. I appreciate that. I appreciate her courageousness and her big mouth. I say it in love, you know, for starting this conversation, because it was an important one to have early on. And so I so appreciate you, because the issues that we've been talking about, I think is going to be a good foundation for us to be a stronger board and to do things differently moving forward. And what I would suggest is that perhaps, and Lord knows, I hate to think about another team, but maybe what we can do is to have some opportunity for us to, moving forward, look at our processes and how we communicate, because we had a lot of miscommunications and we made some assumptions that we shouldn't have made. And now we're in some kind of a hole, you know? But I think that we're smart people, that we have a good heart, and that we want to do better. And I think we can use this as an opportunity to do so. So I think that what I've heard at the table is that we're committed to doing a second retreat. You know, well, first place, we're not calling this retreat any
Work day.
Yeah, this is going to be a strategic plan session. That is what we're going to do. We are going to have a board retreat, and you know what? We've been talking about you know, there are other trainings and opportunities that are available to us as trustees that we can take advantage of. It's really going to help to sharpen us, you know, and bring us closer together. So I think we're fine. But I really appreciate you, Jare, for what you've started here, and appreciate, you know, the willingness of everybody to hear the concerns and to acknowledge when we've made mistakes and to commit to doing something better moving forward. So that said, can we agree to move forward with the strategic plan process? Yes,
I
ma'am.
have a clarifying question. So this day is supposed to be how many hours?
It is 9 to 3.
Okay, is there a, ooh, is there a way to do this? What, this, just, can we do the first part of the day as the retreat and the second part of the day is strategic planning? Does it really take like 9 to 3? Does it really take 6 hours for strategic planning?
Well, this is,
No, I saw the schedule, but I mean, are there ways for it to be condensed is my question. So because I feel like.
well, you could do half of the work and then you have to, do the rest of it offline. That's one way to do it. So for instance, circulate through the World Cafe and just leave it at that. And then the goals, objectives, that kind of work.
I was just trying to find a happy medium.
Yeah, yeah.
That's all.
No,
I was just
Some of
thinking
this work
that.
could be done offline, but you
Right.
won't, it would be hard to gather all the people again to get it done.
And so there you go. That's my point, is it's gonna be hard to gather us again to do, that's all right. I don't want to belabor anything. I'm just trying to make the most efficient use of our time and still trying to get us, because I hear about the core training, but I think, and this is, I'm speaking for myself. I think I'm looking for something a little bit more. So it just seems inequitable to do 2 hours of core training and not spend time getting to know one another, getting to work with one another. And then but that's just me, it's just my thoughts. I was just trying to figure out if we could split the day up and then staff come when we're doing that meeting part in the afternoon and we still get to spend some time together in the morning. But that's just the thought.
Go ahead, Sarah.
So I'm gonna echo Arlene. I think that the silver lining is that we're learning about each other and communication. And here's a therapy. Communication is key. Nobody knows what you want if you don't tell them. But again, nobody's a mind reader. But like these, sort of things, I think that this is a growing pain that I think Arlene is 100% right, that will help us be on a stronger foot as we go forward. I think that there's been, while, misunderstandings included, I think a lot of work has gone into planning this retreat as it is. Oh, it says retreat on the board. into this
Session.
strategic planning day. But I would like more than just the core training in terms of learning things. I would like to propose that we do set up another day or half day when we not only do the core training, but that, we do exercises and things together, which is what I think that I probably had jumbled things together in my head, but it's what I thought this was gonna be. And I don't want us to lose both. And
I don't think it's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I would like us to be able to go forward in a positive, constructive, better way.
So
Yeah,
I don't
we
think it's a
can
matter of
absolutely do
losing
that.
them. Yeah, I don't think it's a matter of losing both or losing one or losing the other. I think that the issues didn't really have to do with the meeting itself, the retreat, board retreat, strategic planning, whatever you want to call it. It had to do with how we got to the point. So it's easy solution could be still to have the strategic plan retreat and to have another retreat in November when schedules allow for the board trustees. I mean, it's a simple solution. It's just a matter of who still wants to, as far as trustees, if you guys still want to have the strategic planning retreat or not.
Yeah, I would advocate for having the strategic planning workday. I think it's vital, and I think that we've, as Arlene has iterated, we've had some growing pains, and something we can tackle down the road at our board retreat is communication and what works best and how we can improve that as a bunch of new trustees and new leadership and whatnot. So I think we're like definitely belaboring this point. So I don't know.
Yeah, we
Can I
don't need to have a
make
vote
motion?
on it.
Yeah, I
It's
would like-
still, it
yeah,
wouldn't
can
be
I make a
changed.
motion to proceed with the strategic planning, formerly called retreat, now work
Well, it wouldn't be
day?
changing anything. We don't
Yeah,
need a
no, okay, then
motion.
perfect. Like,
Yeah, we
I-
wouldn't be.
I
if
would
everyone
advocate moving
disagreed.
on through our meeting agenda if we're all in agreement that we should have the strategic planning workday as the agenda prescribes.
All right, thank you, guys. So next, so Mary Ellen, you're welcome to head out.
Thank you.
Okay, looking forward to the 22nd.
Mhm.
All right. So next on our agenda is our consent agenda. And before I ask for a motion, in the minutes at our last meeting, we didn't catch who, if you scroll down to the bottom, the highlighted portion in yellow for executive session, we didn't catch who made the second on that motion. Yes, we did.
I'm sorry, I thought we skipped it.
No, we did. And we'll do it again at the end of the meeting. So I don't know if, does anyone remember being the second on that motion for executive session? Or if someone would like to volunteer. So I'm talking about the minutes for last month under the consent agenda. We just missed who made that motion.
I don't remember, but I would be willing to volunteer as having made that second.
Okay, that would be awesome. Thank you.
If that is a legal thing for me to do and it's not like some sort of crazy perjury.
I think it's okay.
Just curiosity, in Robert's Rule of Order though, do you need to record who the second is?
We always do, yes. Oh, you mean, do you need to at all? I think so, yeah. Right? Yeah.
It didn't show up on the audio, the audio not pick up whoever said it, and we got enough number or whoever spoke was quiet enough that I couldn't either didn't recognize the voice or couldn't tell who it was. So moving forward, it would be really helpful if either the president or when you're voting, state, or not voting, but you state your name when you're moving or seconding. Sometimes it's like that. But the microphone's on. Okay, so I guess officially, Sarah Masinski seconded that motion last meeting.
Thanks, Sarah. So with that, I can take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as written. Trustee Barnum.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Arlene. All in favor? Steph, I don't know, are we just gonna vote by voice this month? Okay, yeah. I believe it's unanimous. All right, so then we will move on to agenda item 5. And I will turn it over to Adam and Sean to talk about the finances.
Hello and good evening. The reports this month cover August of 2022, which is 2 months or about 60% of the way through our 22-23 fiscal year. As of the end of August, both our revenue and expenditure totals represent approximately 60% of what was budgeted for. Overall, facilities and IT costs continue to trend over budget, while our payroll continues to trend under budget. So I'll turn it over to Adam for a couple more notes.
Okay, thank you, Sean. So we are continuing to see our facilities and IT spending increase significantly compared to prior years. And payroll costs have remained under budget in recent months, but are expected to increase as the year progresses. And that's it for this month. Thank you.
All right, do trustees have any questions for Adam and Sean about the finances or the treasurer's report? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Adam and Sean. We will move on to agenda item 6. Trustees reporting out. Does anybody have anything to report?
So I swung by this branch at like 5 minutes to closing last Friday to pick up my silent auction items. And this is my shout out for staff being like super friendly and accommodating, because it was literally 5 minutes to closing and they, unlocked the door with a smile and got, I was able to get my things in and out. As well as I watched this very like friendly exchange between a staff person and someone who was looking to use the restroom, and they were already closed. And it was handled so nicely and professionally, and with so much dignity for the person who needed the restroom, that while that's not my personal thing, I just wanted to shout out that I was really impressed with how well staff dealt with patrons,
That's awesome.
including, my tardiness.
Thank you for sharing that. And I can't say I'm surprised, but I am glad to hear it.
I'd like to report on 2 things. The West End Steering Committee invited Andrea to meet with them. They wanted to know who our new executive was. They wanted to hear her vision for the library and how things were coming along. And she represented us well. So want to thank Andrea. And the other thing is that got kudos from the Upper Hudson library system with the preparation of the request for the service, the budget from last month, about how quickly everything was able to come together. It was a last minute request, and APL just hopped into it and got it done, and we were able to get monies for the system. And so that people know I'm on the services committee. So y'all made my work easy. Thank you very much. And then the other thing is I want to say thank you to the library system for just being available to the community for doing work. The Albany branch of the NAACP has brokered a collaboration with New York State Civil Service to create pipelines for opportunities for interstate service. They are concerned about the diversity of their workforce. And so we're going to be collaborating. And so we're going to have a big planning meeting here, and we will have Albany Public Library represented as part of the team. So as we're looking at bringing in community stakeholders, including the faith community, community organizations across the board, Albany Public Library is going to be right there in the mix, looking at how we can work together to create this opportunity for jobs for college students, and for, I guess we're going across the education spectrum. So entry-level positions, people already in their profession but like to break into state service. It's going to be an opportunity for everybody. And so I thank Albany Public Library for, being available to be a partner in this process.
Well, thanks for inviting us. And I'm happy to say that Kristen Connors, the head of HR, is going to be joining that conversation as well, which I think is a really good use of her time, good use of my time to learn.
So I had a very busy month as usual. Double events. So I was fortunate to see Arlene at the Nightingale Gala. That was a lot of fun. Then had to run over to Literary Legends. So that was a good time. I saw a couple of the other trustees there and of course the other library families. So it was definitely a great time. Last Saturday was the Black Nurses Coalition Breast Cancer Awareness Walk. It's our 3rd annual. Lots and lots of fun. Over in Arbor Hill, a lot of people came out and we got to see, you know, the mayor, Chief Hawkins, John McDonald, you know, a lot of people came out. So we had a lot of fun. It's a great, great event, spread the awareness about breast cancer. Bridget was there. We got to talk and, you know, she walked with me. So it was definitely a great time. I do also want to make mention about the West Hill Community Needs Assessment. There's going to be a community meeting tomorrow at Swinburne at 6 p.m. It's definitely important for the community to come out and voice their concerns and their needs and their wants about the new community center. I'm very involved with the process and I am hoping that a lot of people do come out. I mean, we've already had a lot of feedback thus far and we just want to still continue to advocate for ourselves and be able to get, you know, some benefits from this new community center that will be built here. And it's going to be at Swinburne Park, the skating rink at 6 p.m. tomorrow. So hopefully we will see a good turnout.
I'll also add, in addition to Literary Legends, I went to the Upper Madison Street Fair where the Pine Hills branch definitely was set up and met some librarians and some of the Friends Foundation. So it's a nice day and always a good event that I think the library has been involved with for a decade, more than that at this point. So.
And I also attended Literary Legends. It was really great. The crowd was great. Everybody was really excited to be there. And I want to shout out the awardees and the speakers. They gave really engaging speeches. And I think everyone had a lot of fun, most importantly. So thank you all. Next is our report on the Upper Hudson Library System Board.
Yes. These guys are busy. I'm telling you. So we had a meeting on September 14th. It was in person. And oath of office was given to the Guild, the new representative from the Guild and Lynn Public Library. And we got a pretty good report from Tim Burke, who is the executive director of Upper Hudson Library System. He shared with us updates with regard to the Racial Equity Committee, which has now been changed. The name has been changed to Equity Committee, and they have had a transition in leadership. Judith Wines is the new chair, and the former chair, Mary Spellows, who has done excellent work, is now involved with Youth and Family Services. She's the new manager there. Adult Outreach Services, they have been busy. They have been in communications with with looking at how to assist communities with extending GED services. And they've been in the prison over in Rensselaer County, looking at what they can do to facilitate services over there. For the community reports, I'm just giving highlights. For the committee reports, the finance committee and the service committees, their recommendations were approved. And our recommendations for the distribution of the construction grant awards was reviewed and approved by the trustees. And we had another conversation. We ended with another conversation about the role of Upper Hudson representatives, trustees. There's concerns about the smaller branches out in the rural communities and how they can be more embraced and more readily served by Upper Hudson. So that was a pretty big conversation, and there's more to follow with regard to that. But that's pretty much my report. Any questions? Okay,
That's really helpful. Thank you.
well, thank you.
So next is the ad hoc strategic plan report, which we've just discussed at length. Do you have anything else to
I don't think I
add?
have anything else to add to that.
All right. And that brings us to our director's report.
Okay. So the themes of September were staff safety, North Albany readiness, and the Literary Legends Gala. So we had a few violent incidents and incidents of verbal harassment over the course of August and September. And this issue of staff safety, this is an issue that is shared with organizations across the entire city at this moment in our city life. It's definitely something that's being felt by, I was in a meeting with ACAP representatives and representatives from other social services agencies in the city. And it's something that the staff of multiple social services agencies are feeling right now as a result of the issues that are among all of us in Albany. So mental health crises happening, people with problems with addiction, with experiencing homelessness, and all of the pressures that are present in society right now, and the lack of the ability to respond to everything that comes up on the part of the social services agencies that are out there. So there's a sort of a staffing issue on that side, and there's a lot of issues on the public side. So anyway, staff are doing a great job of managing the incidents and their aftermath. Of course, I'll get into more safety, the ways that we're addressing this issue later in the report. But in terms of services and programs, September was a very lively month for outreach and new partnerships. Highlights were the Giffen Elementary BBQ and open house event, where APL staff met students and their families. We had a graphic novels book talk with a class of the College of St. Rose at Howe, and Novels at Noon book club at Bach with the neighborhood naturally occurring retirement community, another acronym I'm getting familiar with, NORC, and the APL representation and community engagement at the Upper Madison Street Fair that Paige mentioned earlier. On the operations side, staff have been working absolutely tirelessly to get North Albany ready. So Rebecca Lubin as head of branches, as well as the facilities team, Fireball, Mike Baldwin, the IT team, in particular, Lori on the IT team. They've all been working so hard to get it ready for the grand opening date on October 19th. So that's coming up. And we also had our soft opening yesterday. No one came through our doors, but that was not necessarily a surprise because school was out of session, and it was a soft opening. We didn't announce it. So we were prepared for patrons, but nobody came. It's okay. They'll come later by and by, and certainly after the grand opening celebration, where we're inviting all kinds of people to speak and inviting the community to come and attend an open house from 4 to 7. And of course, you are all more than welcome, trustees, to attend. I am also going to encourage you to stop by the Arbor Hill West Hill branch. I want to give credit to the new library manager, Stephanie Bust, for having the vision to help carry out some of the changes that have happened there. We increased the square footage of the children's area by removing a planter structure that was no longer viable, and that had been covered for a long time anyway. That was just kind of serving as display space that we didn't really need anyway. So we did away with that, increased the square footage, we added fresh paint, fresh carpeting. And just those little touches make a big difference. So well received by the public. I'm not going to go through all of my listed outreach efforts, because it'll just take more time. I want to get to the important stuff. But I did have a good time with outreach. As you can see, I attended a lot of different events and got to meet some Albany VIPs, including the In Our Own Voices facility with Executive Director Tondo Woodrow. Very impressive facility, and her leadership is really inspiring. I'm going to move through statistics to the safety section. So here are the steps that we took in September to address the concerns at our locations. I met with branch staff and library managers across the library to better understand the concerns, including the concerns that are specific to each location, because they are, sometimes it's the way that staff come in or out of the building. It's, places that are hard to see within the building. So just the different areas that are of note for safety concerns, as well as the kinds of incidents that have come up and so forth. I wanted to better understand what staff have been working through. And in addition, the heads of branches, the assistant director, and I made a plan to reboot the safety committee, which is a committee that is codified within the CSEA contract, but that had kind of fallen dormant. So that's a committee consisting of 3 union representatives and 3 management representatives. We're going to meet regularly starting October 14th, and that's an opportunity to revisit the charter of that group, which is basically to improve safety and improve our practices around safety in the library. I'm really looking forward to those conversations, and I think that a lot of good will come of that committee work. Melanie and I also met with the programs coordinator, the programs and partnerships coordinator, Laura Isabel. Wow, I really got that wrong. She's the coordinator of the Patient Services Coordinating Committee, PSCC, which is a collaboration of community stakeholders led by the Department of Mental Health. And the goal of that organization is to connect individuals with services and decrease the dependency on emergency services. And I mention it because that's part of like what we would consider to be the long game in helping the community, helping vulnerable members of the community connect with the resources that they need to get help, so that can kind of work on the underlying issues that sometimes bring incidents into the library space. So those are the steps we've taken, and I look forward again to continuing that work. And of course, we're looking forward to the opening of North Albany next week, and all the good PR that will come of that. So any questions about my report or any element of it?
No questions? All right. Well, thank you, Andrea.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So agenda item 8 is the informational items section. You'll see the org chart memo is there, and I think that was based on our discussion at last month's meeting, right? Some trustees wanted to get a refresh of the org chart and the vacancies that had been filled and stuff like that. So I believe that's what this memo is accomplishing.
Actually, not quite. This doesn't address actually the vacancies, and the situation with hiring and where we are with that is all within my report under the HR section. Let's see, begins on page 4, it goes from 4 to 5. And that's a new format, so I do want to call that out now that you've given me the opportunity. So we, instead of listing just the positions that we filled, we're listing all of the positions that are in process right now. So positions filled, positions that are currently being canvassed for, and or positions that have recently been filled, so that you can get a sense of the entire, or more of the picture, I should say. The org chart is a new organizational chart that I developed after having one-on-one meetings with each of the managers, the leadership team, and prior to this chart going into effect, Melanie was basically, like, everyone was reporting to Melanie and Melanie was reporting to me, which is obviously not sustainable. So this breakdown gives Melanie 4 direct reports, and I have the rest of the management staff as direct reports, which we're gonna, and that is pictured on the actual chart. So happy to address any questions about that. And I put it in as an informational memo because, of course, it was too late to include it in the September report, but it did come up within the last couple of the last week or so after a process.
I just have one question in regards to the programming. I recall you saying that that's a programming committee that develops that. Could you, I guess in a future document, let us know who is in that committee, how that typical programming process works?
Oh, sure. I can let you know. I mean, I can tell you right now. So the Community Programs and Partnerships Coordinator is Amy McLaughlin, and she works with both the Youth Services Programming Committee and the Adult Services Programming Committee to formulate the programs and initiatives that happen across the library in support of the strategic plan. So that is, and both of the committees consist of staff who are engaged in, they're professional children's librarians and all of the staff who support youth services. And then on the adult services side, the staff who are trained in supporting adult services. So those are the members of the.
So how often do they meet typically? When does the programming happen? When is it decided?
The programming committees meet, I believe, quarterly. No, 2 times a year. Thank you, Melanie. Twice a month. Oh, excuse me. A lot more often than I had originally interpreted. So yes, they meet twice a month. And the reason for that, of course, is to support the numerous programs that we run all year round. So we're always planning, excuse me, I believe 3 months out, sometimes more than that, depending on the initiative. I mean, summer reading planning starts, for example, in probably January, if not sooner. So they're both very, very engaged and robust committees that meet regularly to formulate the programs for the library. And of course, there are community partnerships that come into a lot of that programming, and that's where the coordinator's expertise comes in, because she has contacts and connections at all kinds of partner organizations that we've worked with in the past and that we would continue to work with, like Albany Public Schools, et cetera. So
So is Amy McLaughlin going to be at the strategic planning retreat?
yes.
Okay. Does she have reports in reference to what she does? In those meetings that she has determining and how she determines what programming for the library is happening?
So she works with the 2 committees to come up with the plans for the programs. Does that answer your question?
No, but I'll send out an email so I can get more details on that. Thank you.
All right. So I see on our board docs, we put executive session before new business. Is that still what we want to do?
No, there's no reason to go into executive session tonight
Okay.
that I know of.
Okay.
Mhm.
No, I didn't know if we had an update on our executive session from last month.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, there is no update at this time.
Oh, okay. No problem. So we will move on to agenda item 11, which is approving our Albany Public Library's allocation of the central library budget. And so if you open up the draft budget, you'll see that the budget broken down by line. And so those different lines are what that budget goes to. Could you explain it?
Yeah,
Since
I'd be
we have a
happy
bunch
to.
of new Trustees,
Yeah.
where it comes from and why we do it.
Definitely. So as you may or may not know, Albany Public Library serves as the central library for the Upper Hudson Library System. And so as the central library, funds come, and they're not APL funds, they're central library funds. So there is a central library services committee or advisory board, excuse me, that comes together. They are representatives from Upper Hudson Library Director, they're Upper Hudson Library Directors, as well as Upper Hudson Library System Executive Director, Tim Burke. So we meet a couple times in the fall to strategize how to spend the Central Library Services Aid budget. And this particular budget that you have in front of you reflects one key change to how the materials money can be spent, which is to say that the materials money can be spent now on both fiction and nonfiction for adults and youth. So that's really what we see as a positive change, because there's been a huge increase in interest in digital content ever since the pandemic. And it's very easy to use this money to meet some of the needs across the Upper Hudson Library system where digital content is concerned. So that's what you see on the last line, that largest line, which is overdrive digital content for all audience levels. Supporting that content is the platform fee, which is an annual subscription. And sorry, I'm taking you back to the top of the list there. Then Overdrive Magazine Collection annual access fee, that's a flat fee, $25,000, that gains patrons access to all the magazines within the Overdrive collection. It's a lot of different magazines. I don't know if you've enjoyed that collection yet, but I encourage you to give it a spin. And then moving on from there, the Kapira mobile app annual subscription supports the Upper Hudson Library System app that you can download for free, and you can make requests, you can download your account, etc. The Burbio Shared Library Programs Calendar tool is a tool that the Central Library adopted for use by some of the smaller libraries in the Upper Hudson Library System, because they don't necessarily have the resources to populate a calendar like we have. So we have a calendar that LibCal is the tool that we use, and it's a wonderful tool, but it's not a tool that is very small library. And as you know, there are village libraries out there that have much smaller budgets. We have the largest. So anyway, this is all to say that that's that $1,000, which is a very minimal portion of this central library budget, goes to support that shared program calendar tool. And then the staffing for APL, I want to be clear that that is not a salary of an APL staff member. That is, and those of you who have been on the board for a while understand that already, but for the new members, that's a full-time equivalent library one. That's what that number represents. And it's an acknowledgement of the fact that APL librarians order materials for the central library. So it is their time, but it's not like they're getting paid individually. This is just a salary offset. So it goes against our overall salary budget. It is not parsed out in any way, shape, or form. Yes.
So just trying to understand, and it's probably really obvious to everybody else, but so when you're talking about that full-time library equivalent, is that money going to the Upper Hudson Library to support a person worth of work helping us get materials, or is it money coming to us to help with people ordering materials from the library? I got confused.
It is, yeah, thank you. It is money that's coming through UHLS to us.
Okay.
And same goes for the digital content, although there is a committee engaged that not only brings in APL librarians, but also some staff from other Upper Hudson libraries to figure out how to apportion that materials money between and among all of the digital content areas of need that we have. So they'll be engaged in figuring out how much should go to youth services, how much should go to adult services, youth literature materials, how much should go to adult materials, et cetera. So does that help?
So this is all money coming to us, not us giving Upper Hudson money.
Correct.
Okay, I was thinking about it
Yeah.
inside out. Thank you.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, so basically, in exchange for us taking on the responsibility of being the central library and the time and effort that takes of our staff,
Yeah.
ALS compensates us for that.
That's right. And the reason that it comes to this board is that's the sort of order of things. The Central Library Services Advisory Board, I'm probably not getting that quite right, but the Upper Hudson Collective that that decides what the recommendation is going to be, then has to send it to this board because, of course, you as trustees approve monies that flow in to the library, no matter where they're coming from. So that's the deal.
Yes, Melanie?
Clarification?
Of course.
So just to further clarify how it works, the state gives Upper Hudson this money to then give to the central library, which we are. If you notice, there's the overdrive platform fee, there's the Burbio fee that are Upper Hudson purchased products. So they give us the money and then we have to give it back to them to pay the invoices. So it's legality has to go that way. We've asked many times since Upper Hudson is paying for the platforms, if it has to come to us, but because of state law, it does have to come through us. So it's a pass through essentially.
Yeah, it's pass through. Thank you, Melanie. Any questions? Yeah, I should say other questions. Okay, thank you.
Well, then we will entertain a motion to approve this budget.
Trustee West, I move that we approve the budget for the Upper Hudson Library System Central Library.
Trustee Robinson seconds.
Thank you, Trustee Robinson. All in favor? Aye. It is unanimous. The motion carries.
Thank you. All right. And I'll report this back to Upper Hudson. Thank you.
All right. And so that brings us to our last scheduled item, which is our schedule of board meetings for the year 2023. We typically approve our board meetings on a calendar year basis, even though our fiscal year runs the other way. These are our dates. I believe staff has cross-checked them against holidays and days that the library is closed. Does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Is there, have there ever been any instances where a board meeting date has been moved?
For snowstorms and things like that, yes.
February 14th, Valentine's Day. That just jumps out to me.
Yeah. The library's open. I do have a question, which is, I noticed that I think this year we closed on the day that Yom Kippur began rather than the main day. Are we doing that again? And is that typical for us? Like, is that what we should be doing? I guess is my question.
Someone addressed that last meeting and was saying that when sundown.
It's like sundown.
Right, it was based on when sundown occurred and when the actual holiday was.
Mhm.
The day we close is because of the sundown, it's sundown to sundown, but it would end sundown this time of year is for the board meeting. So that's why it would be, I clarified it with our person who is Jewish on staff.
Okay.
Sundown would fall after the meeting started or before the meeting started, so we could therefore have the meeting.
No, I'm in for closing the library, like. Okay, sorry, I just mixed up two different things. My question was,
It's because it's this Sunday. It's falling on a Sunday, I believe, because we did include it in the contract.
right, I remember you saying that, thank you, got it now, okay.
We did a day of observance of.
Okay, and Andrew, did I didn't mean to cut you off earlier, did I answer your question about board meetings being moved?
You, sort of. I have another question now. So a follow-up to that would be that, so the calendar is done, the meeting schedule is done on a calendar basis. The board serves on a fiscal basis, correct? So are absences counted on a calendar basis or on a fiscal basis?
I believe on a fiscal basis. Anything else?
October 10th is my birthday and I want cake at the meeting.
I thought we couldn't bring food into the library.
Just kidding.
Oh.
That was an attempt at levity
I'm
around
just checking. I'm just
scheduling
checking
the
up on
meetings.
my rules and learning.
Happy belated.
Thank you.
Oh, it was yesterday.
True, yesterday.
Yes.
Oh, look, see, I didn't even catch that.
Thank you.
Wow, happy birthday.
You
Right,
don't have
me
to
too.
sing. You don't have to sing.
It's just like, I hope you did something fun on your
I
birthday.
sure did. And I can't wait till 2023, October 10th.
Wow,
We're
how
gonna
was
be
your
together.
first birthday in the Capital District?
No, I've had so many trustee meetings on my birthday. I can't even count over time because it just so happens that, October 10th often falls on a Tuesday night. And my last board also met on Tuesday nights. So here we are, this is like meant to be.
Wow.
Well, I'll circle the date. All right.
I can't believe that's in the public record.
That's all right, because I was checking for my birthday on the meeting schedule. I'm just, I'm like, wait, so.
Melanie, that's a great way to spend your birthday. Mine was last month.
Wow. All right. So if there are no other questions, we will take a motion.
Wait, so just sorry.
No, go
Are
ahead.
we really keeping February 14th? I'm just asking. I have a whole family and I probably will not be here on February 14th.
We could move that to the 28th since we have to have a special meeting anyway. We could move our meeting that month to the 28th.
But don't we have to have a separate time for the budget meeting?
We can have it before or after. I'm just saying, we can join.
Like do a double meeting?
Yeah, we're not like required by law or anything to have a budget meeting. We do that just to kind of separate out the issues because there's always a lot of questions on the budget and it's like an important issue. So we hold the February 28th meeting as a special meeting. Our typical meeting time is the second Tuesday of every month. I don't know if we can change that.
You can make an exception if you really needed to.
Well, do you want to put it to like a majority vote informally, whether we should keep February 14th?
Could we maybe move it to next time to think about? I feel like there may be ramifications if, everyone expects the meeting to be on the second Tuesday. And I mean, obviously we don't have a ton of people coming, but on a personal level, I really don't care and I could come either day. I
think it's far enough out that notification would be more than well in advance. I mean, we're talking about next year, February 14th. So we got, a couple months to get the word out that that meeting would be conjoined with the 28th meeting.
Are we able to table this particular item until November?
Yeah.
I would suggest, just thinking, I might suggest approving this, and then maybe we could put it back on for November just to talk about February, because I know that some trustees have reached out and asked to set this as soon as possible so that they can get it on their calendars and like make sure that they are available, just so we have the meeting dates solidified for the year.
So I move that we accept the 2023 Board of Trustees meeting schedule with the understanding that we will revisit the February 14th meeting date.
All right,
Second.
trustee Gauss seconds. All in favor?
Yep.
Aye. The motion carries unanimously. So it is time for our second public comment period. Has there been any public comment during the meeting?
Go ahead.
All right, and so that brings us to adjournment. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So I would like to the dismay of many of my trustees, I would like to bring up again this issue with the meeting. I would like to maybe make a suggestion, see who all would be in favor of it or not. It seems that a lot of people, their sentiments, even the newer trustees, is that they would like to meet together first before we had any externals at our meeting. I suggest that if we still want to reserve that date, that we have two separate meetings at that time. If the employees or if the staff want to meet and continue on with the strategic planning schedule, that's fine. Whoever wants to attend that, that's fine. We also could have a simultaneous day and have the trustees meeting as well, who will want to do more of a board workshop sort of day. And that's something that we could take on. Whoever did want to do that separate day, we could take on with the activities or the team building that we would want to do for that day as another alternative to what's happening here. Because I'm gonna advocate for my seat. So
Well, okay, so, and looking at it in practical terms, do we have enough time to plan for such a program?
I think the people who would want to do it, the trustees who would want to do it, would be able to come amongst each other and make that determination. I mean, it's not nothing that has to be so formalized that we have to follow someone else's schedule.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Mhm,
If we were going to have a retreat that was meaningful,
mhm,
like what you're describing,
mhm.
do we have enough time to do that between now and the week after?
I think that if we have a group of trustees who would be on board with that, I think we would have enough time to come up with something amongst ourselves of ideas that would be something meaningful we could do to spend the time to come together. I think that there's a whole lot of just offhand things that could really take us through the day, simple things, just even in conversation and things that we would want to get straightened and hammered out. So that's my suggestion. I know my perspective of what all transpired, and honestly, I'm not comfortable with, I'm just not comfortable with it. I'll say it. I'm not comfortable with it. So, that's my suggestion. Some people may still attend, some people may not attend, but that's a suggestion of another alternative that can happen. So we don't have to cancel the whole day or have some trustees feel like their seat, their opinion, their voice is not being heard as well. So. Is anybody open or have another idea in reference to how we could spend the day, aside from what is scheduled?
I think we talked about it, Jai, and like we all agreed that we need to keep going forward on the strategic plan.
I didn't say we would not keep going on the strategic plan. So in reference to the strategic plan itself and its process, our meetings to gather the ideas, the process that's happening on Saturday is to gather more information, brainstorming and get more ideas. It's not a cancellation of what is happening. There will still be brainstorming, there will still be ideas happening and information gathered for the purposes of strategic plan. You have many trustees who voice concerns that their idea of what was happening that day is not what is taking place. Now, I don't know at what point we would invalidate or not really take weight to what a understanding of a trustee would be and how they would be spending their time on a Saturday as well as any others when they had a preconceived notion of what they would be doing that day. I think it's just as important if trustees are voicing they want to have team building exercises aside from a strategic plan that is already in process that will continue. I'm not saying we're going to discontinue the strategic planning process. That would be absurd. We're going to continue the process. The purpose of the staff being there is to brainstorm and bring their ideas forward. That us having a separate meeting or separate activities aside from that is not going to stop their brainstorming and them bringing to the table more concerns that they have. So now I'm questioning what is the point or what would be the harm of having a separate simultaneous meeting of trustees that want to spend the day the way they envision spending that day.
I'm going to speak for myself. My intention is to show up on the 22nd and participate in the strategic planning exercise. The loss, I think, if you have a parallel meeting of separate trustees, like the benefit of strategic planning and the purpose of planning, right, is to bring in different perspectives and different areas of expertise. So I feel like if you know, trustees may elect to do this, but I feel like if I elect to remove myself from the strategic planning activity of that day, then I'm no longer able to collaborate with, you know, the like head of X branch, and I'm no longer able to collaborate with the IT person. And so I feel like that's actually detrimental to the strategic planning process. So just speaking for myself, I would not attend a parallel trustee meeting. I would rather have a dedicated day to that activity where we can thoughtfully create an agenda that meets our needs as a new board. And I also, yeah, I guess that's where I personally stand. So.
Yeah, I agree with Paige. I wish communication was better. I do think that we have learned from that. But in addition to feeling like I'm going to miss out, whereas I do agree that we've gotten staff input, you know, both through the meetings with Mary Ellen and with Melanie and with Andrea. I think that if we have staff specifically coming to interact with us and we don't show up for the staff, whether it's intentional or not, I feel that it would present a face that the board values the staff less than I think we do, and that we don't see them as important. And I would want to avoid that perception.
So I think that would be a perception if this conversation was had offline. This is an open it's about transparency. So if it's an open conversation and anyone can tune into this meeting, even after the fact, because they can watch it on YouTube and see how we arrived at this decision, and that clearly regardless of what you want to say the reason is, multiple people had a different perception of what was supposed to happen on this meeting. So with that being said, I think it would be very concerning if people want to form their own opinions as to we don't value the staff after this has been hashed out on public platform. So I will be very vocal. I care about the staff. I still care about the community. I care about the elected seat that I'm sitting in, that my community has put me here to represent them, to advocate for everyone. We all have a responsibility here. So to have the assumption that we don't value the staff because we have a difference of opinion and now we're trying to find a means to accommodate everyone in the situation so that everyone feels valued, I think that that's a disservice. I think it's a big disservice to characterize it in that way. So staff are important, trustees are important. How do we come to a happy medium? If I leave here and I'm still uncomfortable with what's happening, I know I'm a trustee who is not okay with what's happening and who my feelings as a trustee didn't get heard. So I wouldn't leave this meeting if I hadn't said anything satisfied with the result and the outcome would be. So what does each trustee's feelings have to do with what's happening at this meeting? Are our feelings or what we thought was gonna happen supposed to be invalidated? It's not supposed to matter?
I'm not sure what you're getting at, but I think that the hour-and-a-half conversation we had is the happy medium where we all want to schedule a separate board retreat, and we will, and we all want to work on
So I'm
communication.
saying that I'm not a
and we
part of
will.
the all. So now we can stop with the all. So now I'm saying I'm not a part of the all. I'm saying I've had conversations with other trustees who are not present at the moment. Bridget, one of them, Sarah Dallas, one of them as well. And it was not their understanding of what would happen. And the suggestions in reference to even what I just proposed is something that we talked about. So I don't feel that all trustees would be on board or comfortable with what's happening just because they're not here to speak up or just because they're not speaking up right now. So I'll be the one to put it out there. I have no problem with that. As opposed to someone just not showing up, because that's a possibility as well. People can just not show up. So let's be realistic in what's happening here. Just because we had an hour-and-a-half conversation about it, it doesn't mean it's settled. It doesn't mean everyone's okay or feels comfortable walking away from the table that their feelings were hurt. So that's even not even valid to even say that.
Well, I mean, we came to a consensus earlier. There's no value in opening it back up. If those trustees have something to say,
I'm a trustee and to speak on behalf of everyone, if
Jerry,
I'm a trustee and I'm opening it back up, that's what these meetings are for though. You might want to leave, that's fine, but I'm a trustee and I'm opening it back up for discussion because I'm not satisfied with the discussion. So I opened it up so everyone can have input. So everyone can know where everyone stands because I'm part of everyone. Just like if you had a concern and you weren't satisfied with what was discussed and what apparently everyone came to the consensus of, and you still had a concern, I would hope you would be comfortable enough to bring it up and feel that your fellow trustees would understand you were not satisfied or you were not okay with what happened and would sit there and hopefully be able to come to a solution or be able to talk it out more to hopefully feel that trustee knows that their other trustees are understanding of their feelings and their concerns. So with that being said, is everyone still on the same board and agenda?
I just feel like it's not settled. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, it was an hour and 15 minutes that we talked about the same thing. It's clear that it's not settled and people still feel a way about it. So where do we go from here? You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody wants to go to 2 meetings in one day. A Saturday with me having 3-year-olds at home, that's a lot to just be gone for the day. And I can't do 2 things at once. I've tried it. It doesn't work. So like, what do we do now? Like, how do we move forward? How do we make everyone feel okay and comfortable with what the next steps are? That's just
I think in this situation, everybody's probably not going to feel okay. I think where I'm at is, what do we need to do right now to keep moving forward? Okay, I understand and respect your concern, I really do. But at this point, I don't think it has to be an either or situation. I don't see any harm. I know that it wasn't what we expected, and we've all admitted that there were problems in the process and how communications occurred. and what should have been done first. We all admit that. But we do need to move forward with the strategic plan. I don't see how working with staff is going to hurt us to get the information and to move that process along. We have opportunity to come together afterwards, you know, to continue to process the information, to do the team building that we wanted to do, to get additional training, you know, to strengthen us, to sharpen what is, you know, we need to get done for our community. I don't think it's an either or situation. I understand the upsetness and I respect it. I was concerned, you know, when we first started talking. I still have some concerns, but I think that there's a way that we can get it all done. Not the way we had intended or we thought we would do it, but it's a way of getting things done in spite of, and can still do it with a spirit of excellence and a spirit of love of our community, and with the expectation that we're going to do better and be better for it.
So my issue is Sarah Dallas, for example, said she was not going to be available and able to be here. We didn't move the schedule or do another schedule to try to include her and make sure she was involved in a strategic planning process or in the board retreat, whichever one you want to call it. We get a second survey sent out because staff cannot be at a supposed board retreat, a supposed strategic planning meeting or brainstorming process for the board. Something is very awry here when we are altering schedules to accommodate staff that the focus is really supposed to be on a board brainstorming. I have no problem with staff being there, but to now say all trustees, there was a difference of opinions, a difference of what would happen, and it's impossible to try to accommodate staff and board when we've accommodated staff so far as to rearrange the schedule of the trustees to accommodate the staff, and a trustee not even being able to participate in this because they already voiced from the very beginning, October is not they're not going to be able to make it. I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned. We can end it, but I'll let you guys know, this is very, very, very concerning to me. It's very, very concerning to me.
I just have a point of correction, which is that the dates were derived from Mary Ellen Pichet's calendar of availability. She said that it had to happen on a Saturday for obvious reasons, and that's why the dates were the dates. It had nothing to do with staff or trustee. We put out as many Saturdays as we could in the time frame. So,
All right, I will take a motion to adjourn whenever someone would like to make one.
I really feel bad that, I really feel bad that this conversation is going this way. And I don't know how to make it right.
I'll be the first to say, I will not be in attendance at the Saturday meeting, unfortunately. I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second?
Very unfortunate. This is crazy.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor? Aye.
If I had money, I would hire her to be my lobbyist. You've got skills, sister.
Raise your hand if you're in favor of the motion so we can close the meeting. 6 are in favor. Thank you.
Good night, Jerry.
Raise these back to you.
Keep it. You keep that.
Good night. How are you, kiddos? trust that I don't lose it.
You're like, I hope they're in bed.
I really would hope that they would be in bed right now. I highly doubt it.
Best of luck.
Look out for the curtain.
It's blue.
Your skirt's super cute.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.